Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
Welcome back to Going In Raw. It's time for another count out top 10 show where we talk about 10 topics. This time, Dark Side of the Ring revealed. We're going to be doing 10 pitches. We did this before. We did this like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
For Dark Side of the Ring. Now that the latest season has concluded with the Marty Jannetty episode, which our review of that is up right now over at the Friendo Club channel where we do the shorter form content. Now that it's done, feel like we'll go ahead and maybe offer up some ideas for the new season of Dark Side of the Ring, assuming they're going to do another one.
Yeah, season 5.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it'd be season 5 already. So we had done this a couple of years back in between seasons, and people seemed to like it. And in fact, I'm not going to claim credit for this, but some of the ideas that we had proffered ended up being actually, produced, done as episodes. Yeah, produced, which is awesome. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, some of these are kind of obvious. But here's the thing about this episode is that we looked at all the ones that we had previously proffered. We're not doing any redos.
No.
These are fresh
New
ideas. New fresh ideas. Yeah.
Fresh, new ideas.
Now, one thing we noticed from this season of Dark Side of the Ring is it sort of took two tacks. One, kind of a familiar route of, looking at wrestlers who just sort of couldn't get out of their own way. Be it Marty Jannetty. Well, Chris Candido was actually kind of a sad case because I feel like, his ultimate, when he died, it was sort of just a fluke. It was a fluke injury thing. That
really was. Yeah.
But Matt Bourne, guys with heavy substance abuse issues. But there was also, for example, the Bash of the Beach episode, where it was just more like an angle that the people behind the scenes couldn't get on the same page on. And then one of them dudes, Hulk Hogan brother, in the ultimate of that doesn't work for me brother, sued WCW and Vince Russo for defamation. And then they were like, hey, Hogan, you can't a fictional character cannot sue another fictional character.
Exactly.
For defamation. You can't defame that anyways.
A fictional character indeed.
So that sort of, maybe inspired a little bit of some of the topics that we've got today. But also, even in the recent history, there's been some topics that, I'll be honest, might have to wait a good decade or two, probably, before it's actually a topic of Dark Side. There's a spoiler for you.
It's not going to stop us from talking about him here, though.
No, because it'd still be, I'll be honest, it'd be ballsy for them to tackle Brawl out like next season.
I know, so soon. Imagine the numbers that episode would get. Huge.
Oh, man.
Huge. That story dominated thumbnails for us for a good 8 months.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Number 10.
10.
The Heroes of Wrestling. The ironically titled Heroes of Wrestling. Now, our good friend Brian Zane did a whole video on this like 7 years ago or something, a while ago. And then OSW Review, I know they did one. So this was an ill-fated pay-per-view with a pretty decent premise back in 1999 when wrestling was arguably at its mainstream peak. What if we put together a bunch of dream matches between legends from the 80s and of the earlier 90s? So names like Yokozuna, Jim Neidhart of the Hart Foundation, Jake the Snake Roberts, King Kong Bundy were all signed up. But then there was a bunch of other names, like Sid was approached, but he was still under contract with WCW. And there were a bunch of other people on the card.
Yeah.
And it's mostly known for just being an absolute abject disaster. And the face of that disaster was Jake Roberts, who unfortunately, at the time he was battling his addiction issues. Well, unfortunately, right before this this pay-per-view went live, he had basically shown up and he had clearly fallen off the bandwagon. And
he was inebriated. Yes. And
it was more well known for his, performance.
The imagery of him essentially jerking off a snake. Yes.
Right. Correct. Yes.
To put it bluntly. I mean, that's kind of,
that's what he did.
That's what he did.
Oh, man.
Took a snake, put it between his legs, and you can imagine the rest if you haven't seen the footage. It's out there.
It's out there.
Considering the lineup of wrestling legends, some other names, Abdul the Butcher,
Yeah.
You mentioned Bundy, Yokozuna, Tully Blanchard, Bushwhackers, Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Greg Valentine, George the Animal Steel. That kind of lineup, and it generated all of 29,000 pay-per-view buys.
Okay, so hold on one second there.
What?
Hold on. I understand wrestling was at its peak. When I saw that number, I'm like, okay, I know this is a heavily advertised show with some major names. 29,000 people is kind of a lot of people, Larson. I mean, I know, like, they probably were hoping for like 100,000, right?
Yeah.
I get that. 29,000 is kind of nothing to, like, I guess back then it probably was just to, like, it's like, oh man, what a crappy batch of numbers. But like, I don't know, 29,000 is pretty good for a lot of people these days, I would think.
These days, we got to go back to 1999 where there was no streaming. You couldn't watch TikToks.
Competition.
You couldn't watch TikToks on your phone.
Yeah.
The competition for your television dollar was nowhere near as vast as it is now.
That is true. It
had 4 channels and pay-per-view. That's all you had.
Come on, man. I know the Larson household had cable dating back a decade before this, man, at least.
Probably closer to 15 years
Probably
before the
closer
show.
to 15 years, exactly.
Yes, there was still cable. But nonetheless, there wasn't hundreds upon hundreds of channels like there is now.
Yeah.
Several, maybe a few dozen, yes.
I mean, and it was attended, and again, the attendance number is like, crapped on by 2,300 people.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, I think an episode of Collision did like less than that not that long ago. So I'm just saying.
Then again, competition for entertainment dollar today, way more than it was in 1999.
What I didn't get, and I don't know, maybe it's in the Wikipedia entry. Do we know how much the pay-per-view cost to purchase?
Oh, what they ponied up to put it on? That I don't know.
Because 29,000 times, even if it was $20, is what, about $500,000 right there?
Yeah.
Which I don't know how much these people are charging or what the costs were, but evidently it wasn't successful enough to do another one because a whole franchise was planned for Heroes of Wrestling. And some of this, I mean, honestly, some of this was just beset by horrible luck. I mean, honestly, most of it was. If Jake the Snake Roberts shows up and he's clean and sober, you might have something good on your hands here. Now, look, 29,000 people just means that it wasn't advertised heavily enough or just there wasn't the demand for it. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm not sure that would have changed it. But like the historical perspective on this probably would have been a lot different. For example, had Gordon Soley not contracted throat cancer right before this occurred because he was advertised as the color commentator. Instead, they got a guy who had no idea what he was doing. And then there was Dutch Mantell also. But the play-by-play guy had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah.
You could have whatever your opinion on Dutch Mantell is, he knows what wrestling moves are. So
yeah, that's true.
So which is more that could be said for the actual color commentator. But Gordon Soley, he ended up passing away 9 months afterwards because of throat cancer. That's that's just bad luck from the promoter's perspective.
It is
to say nothing of the human aspect of Gordon Soley having throat cancer.
Yeah. No, it does seem like this show was kind of befallen with some bad luck in several respects. And I guess to a degree it shows that even though wrestling was at its peak, arguably in the late 90s, early 2000s, it didn't necessarily have a trickle down effect,
right?
To the industry writ large. I think at that time the wrestling fan who was spending their money on wrestling wanted to see the wrestlers of the then and now. They want to spend their money to watch Stone Cold and The Rock and the NWO and Goldberg and such.
I've heard it's funny. It's interesting though, dude, because like the people who want to plunk down pay-per-view money. Number one, they're already plunking down pay-per-view money for 2 promotions because WCW 99 hadn't quite reached. I forget, was the finger poking late or early 90?
It was early 99.
It was early 99. Okay, well, still they had Hogan. And so they were still putting in money on WCW and WWF pay-per-views. But if I recall correctly, generally speaking, like the indie state of pro wrestling, I think was pretty decent. Like it was experiencing, I've heard a boom. But what you're saying is absolutely true. The trickle-down effect from WWF and WCW did not affect the pay-per-view.
No.
Audience.
I mean, 99, that was before the birth of Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
So the independent scene, and we'll talk about a promotion that sprung up in the wake of WWF buying WCW here later on that featured a lot of prominent indie talent of the time that have gone on to do major things. You had Bryan Danielson, you had Samoa Joe and AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian. There's all these names in the late 90s, early 2000s that were really making a name for themselves in the independent scene, which led kind of directly to the birth of Ring of Honor in a lot of ways. So
right.
This was just a couple years before that, so for sure.
I'm gonna see really quick. Here we go. So here's the lineup for Heroes of Wrestling and Dave Meltzer star ratings, Larson. Of course, you and I, we have our Guess the Meltzer star ratings series over at the Friendo Club Wrestling channel. Guess what the highest rated match, guess what the actual match rating was?
1.5 stars.
1.25.
Okay.
And that was Too Cold Scorpio versus Julio Fantastico, which went about 10 minutes. Hard to believe a Too Cold Scorpio match would do so poorly.
Yeah, Too Cold Scorpio is great.
Otherwise, there was only one other match on the card that had a positive star rating. It was Samu and the Samoan Savage versus Marty Jannetty and Tommy Rogers. It went 10 minutes, and it got a 0.5 star. Otherwise, everything got negative stars or dud. Interestingly, the Bushwhackers match against Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik did worse than the main event with Jake Roberts and Yokozuna, Jim Neidhart, and King Kong Bundy.
My goodness.
I'd have to read his write-up on it. I'm assuming maybe the train wreck nature of it saved it from getting a negative 5-star review that the Bushwhackers got. Instead, it got a negative 3-star review. Yeah. So, anyways, needless to say, this one would be easy. Also, from a production standpoint, seemingly everybody and their uncle is using the pay-per-view. It's available free on YouTube. It's just out there. Doesn't seem to be any copyright issues. So you guys can use whatever footage you want from this shit.
Exactly.
And you'll be in the clear.
No clearance. No clearance issues with that one.
And they're already tight with Jake the Snake Roberts, I'm sure.
That's true.
Yeah, he'd probably be fine recollecting. Or maybe not. Maybe it's a sore subject for him. Who knows? Anyway.
Yeah, who knows?
Let's move on, Larson. To number 9.
9.
HAKU.
So HAKU is generally regarded, at least by a good number of people in the professional wrestling industry, past and present, as one of, if not the toughest men to ever be a professional wrestler. These stories that people tell, stuff of legend.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like stuff like a normal dude like myself can't fathom that someone would be able to do.
Yeah.
You know, and yet HAKU has apparently done them all. I mean, in terms of like a story arc, it'd be an hour of people talking about these incredible feats that HAKU have done.
I believe there is a compilation of exactly that on YouTube of like a variety of wrestlers from the past talking about HAKU stories.
Yeah.
And like the one that stands out to me mostly is I think didn't he like rip somebody's eye out, like one of the it was like on the
so apparently he's bit somebody's nose off during a altercation at an airport. He pulled somebody's teeth out of their mouth, which that one I can't imagine how that's even possible. Like with your bare hands pulling someone's teeth out. And then the eyeball one. Apparently, like cops were trying to detain him and were using batons and mace, and he was no-selling all of it.
Yeah,
like there's these legendary stories about HAKU, and to hear, I know Kevin Sullivan's told some stories. Shane Douglas.
So I have like a whole list here. Rick Martel says, "I'll give you an example of how real wrestling is." King HAKU, I would put this guy against anybody in a real fight. He could kill anybody. This guy's a killing machine. Toughest motherfucker I've ever met. Ric Flair says he's the toughest son of a bitch I've ever met in my whole life. No lie, take my word for it. Perry Saturn says nobody would stand a chance against Ming, not even a question. He could kill everyone without blinking. There's no one anything could do about it. And this last one here, Ted DiBiase. Says, one time we were in a rough part of St. Louis for a show. Everyone had been drinking. A large fight broke out, which resulted in the police showing up. Meng had a few drinks, but saw the fight break out, so he started trying to break it up. In the process, police thought he was part of the fight and maced him and then handcuffed him. Meng was cuffed behind his back, looked at the police, and snapped the handcuffs.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome.
I got one here from Shane Douglas during a shoot interview. Says you'd be better off fighting the U.S. Army than fighting HAKU. He talked about that incident with the police.
Yeah.
Kevin Sullivan says this about the bar fight. He says it was fast and furious. He then grabbed another guy who tried to get involved and knocked him unconscious.
Oh, listen to this one. Arn Anderson. Is there more from? Yeah,
there's more. It says Meng bit through the guy's shirt like a wolf, bit a chunk out of the guy's back, and spit it on the floor.
Ouch.
They said it's time to go.
Here's Arn Anderson says there are 3 types of men in the world. There are tough men, there are wrestler tough men, and then there's Meng. He was in a completely different category than anybody else on the planet. There was one instance where a large cowboy was arguing with Meng, and he pushed the cowboy through 2 different sets of doors using only one hand. Is it possible? Haku's an alien.
Maybe. He didn't is one that tells a story about how he took HAKU took 2 fingers on his right hand, his index and middle. Wow, these two fingers reached into somebody's mouth and pulled a tooth out.
So
didn't use the thumb.
He's a dentist.
No
as well.
thumb.
He just used these ones right here. Apparently, Eric Bischoff was too afraid to fire Meng in WCW. Yeah. Apparently,
I could make for an enjoyable watch. With the reenactments and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, here's listen to this. Just close your eyes and imagine the Dark Side guys reenacting this. So Brutus Beefcake had gone to management and complained that HAKU slapped him too hard during their match. When HAKU found out, he walked straight to Beefcake's locker room and grabbed him out of the shower. He started choking him and lifting him 2 feet in the air while everybody else looked on because they were too scared to step in and break it up. Eventually, Hulk Hogan came in and talked Meng down. Doesn't work for me, brother.
That sounds like an hour of entertaining content right there.
Like, there doesn't have to be an arc. It's just stories. Just
stories.
Just stories and reenactments.
Exactly.
Naked beefcake.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on. Number 8.
8.
XWF, also known as the Excitement Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, they didn't want the Extreme Wrestling Federation because apparently they wanted to have a more family-friendly approach to counter-program what WWF was doing at the time.
Yeah.
So this sprouted up after the fall of WCW, and they wanted to form a company that was competition for WWE. And so you look at the talent roster that was assembled for this upstart promotion.
Oh, man.
You had Hogan, you had Perfect.
Jannetty.
Shivani, Lawler.
Buff Bagwell.
Piper.
AJ Styles. He was in on
AJ Styles.
Young AJ Styles. But
young Carlito.
Daniels. Yeah.
Christopher Daniels. Sable.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
Was involved. Like, there were some major names involved. Apparently, they shot 10 hours worth of content and put that together to pitch to network executives looking for a TV deal. However, by the time in early 2022, when they were starting to shop that around, all the major names started signing elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
No Hogan. No Perfect.
No Perfect.
So they had programming without the major stars in it to promote it.
Yeah.
They were all on WWE television.
Yeah.
They weren't going to promote this new stuff.
Right. So imagine you're watching like a wrestling promotion and then like you're 10 episodes in and then like episode 11 hits and then all of a sudden it's Marty Jannetty main eventing.
Exactly.
And it's like, what? That didn't make any sense. I was expecting Hulk Hogan versus, I don't know, who do we have here? Conan or Buff Bagwell. No, Buff Bagwell was back there. I guess this would have been after Buff Bagwell.
Yeah, that was after Buff.
He wasn't
going Rey Mysterio signed with XWF for a moment.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio.
So,
yeah. The Kiss Demon. They had the Kiss Demon, too.
They had the Dale Torborg, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, it'd be interesting if the narrative was or is, here's this promotion trying to start up to be an alternative, because at this early stage won't be direct competition with WWE, but an alternative to WWE. Mm-hmm. And then Vince sees the major names involved and decides, oh, I can't have this.
Yeah, right.
Starts signing up the major names to decap this new promotion from starting, of course, if that's the actual narrative.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like also a lot of the ideas that we have for in this episode, it could be sort of like, the Infinity War / Endgame. It's like we had the steroid trial, but here comes Black Saturday and nationalizing, like here comes him snapping up all the territories.
Exactly.
And it doesn't end in the 80s. In 2001, he's still like trying to kill off other promotions who have names that could potentially, be competitive to the WWE. So you could tell, like maybe for the first time, instead of each story being its own thing, an overarching narrative where, Vince McMahon is revealed as the true Thanos of wrestling,
of the world of professional wrestling. Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that. And then this isn't even on here, but like, the Vince allegations, the eventual fall of Vince.
Yeah.
You can't tell. Hey, they're probably waiting that shit out. They're like, we're going to tell our big Vince story because that might be around the corner. He's got this big federal investigation.
Yeah.
So anyways, XWF, let's talk about another Vince McMahon story. Number 7. WWE Crown Jewel 2019. Not necessarily the event itself, but simply trying to get the wrestlers back home.
Yeah. So shortly after the show, there was talk about the charter flight that would be booked for the talent being delayed.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently, one of the reasons for the delay was initially or publicly stated was issues with the plane. Yeah. And so you had apparently talent on the plane waiting to take off, trying to get together and book a new charter flight for them to get home because there was a SmackDown on Friday.
They had to do SmackDown, yeah.
And then not too long after, you started hearing word about Vince and Brock and Hogan and Flair, because Hogan and Flair were captaining those two teams in the tag match, getting out of there seemingly in a hurry.
Yeah.
About details of the delayed flight not necessarily being related to issues with the plane.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about Vince getting in an argument about TV money while there. And you hear all these conflicting stories and you're not sure what to think about what may have happened on that plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Apparently there was a former WWE wrestler.
Yeah, I've got it right here. I got this affidavit here.
Yes.
So yeah, there was what is this? There was like it was a class action lawsuit, a class action investor lawsuit. Oops, sorry. Claiming that WWE had misrepresented their business prospects in the Middle East and damaged their brand with a Saudi partnership. And within this lawsuit, there was testimony from an anonymous person. I think it was a former WWE employee.
Who claimed to be a former
here we
WWE
go.
talent, yeah.
It says referred to as a confidential witness too. They are a former WWE wrestler who started with the company in 2012 and left in April of that year. He was one of 20 wrestlers flown back. So here's some of the stuff. It said Vince and other executives, Flair, Hogan, Brock, left in a hurry while everyone else was ushered off their plane. The pilot sounded distressed, and he was told by a flight attendant that, quote, "It seems someone doesn't want us to leave the country." Talent was informed that it was a mechanical issue, but they also saw a ton of armed men in militia garb blocking their exit and staring at the wrestlers. When Senior Executive Director of Talent Relations, Mark Carano, was asked about what's going on, Carano told this witness that McMahon and the Crown Prince got into an argument about late payments related to the 2019 July Super Showdown show. Vince cut the live feed of Crown Jewel, that event, like the one that they were leaving from, due to the money issue, which made bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, very mad. It said not only did WWE work with its charter airline to deflect any blame from the company and dismiss public complaints as laughable and conspiracies, their claims that anyone who didn't wish to return to Saudi Arabia as a result of the situation were bogus. But the witness alleges that for many who tried to tell Talent Relations that they wouldn't go back, WWE abused their power and threatened the future trajectory of their careers if they did not go. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Bunch of dudes with guns saying, no, you're not going anywhere.
It's going to be interesting to see if this is a subject they decide to tackle at some juncture, if they get people who are on that flight to speak on the record. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, because that's literal dangerous ground right there. I don't know. People might just be like, it's gonna be like, I don't know, like Eric. It's like obviously Eric Redbeard, but he's like pixelated out and his voice is modulated.
Well, they just get NWO Eric Redbeard.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It's like obviously Carl Anderson, but it's all, no, yeah, brother, it was not too sweet. Wasn't happy to see those gunmen. They were a real Bullet Club.
Vince wasn't being a good brother about getting us out of there.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 6. CZW. Just the entirety of the company.
Yeah.
Their Tournament of Death, right? Like they should be focusing on that shit.
Or the Cage of Death, or all the whatever of death stuff.
Whatever of death CZW has to offer.
Yeah. So, CZW sprung up towards the tail end of the existence of ECW. It looks like 1998, 1999 or so. Zandig.
Yeah.
He seems like quite a character himself.
Yeah, he'd make for a good episode, probably.
It'd be something else, man.
Yeah.
I guess Vice did do the Tournament of Death documentary. Isn't that the one where the guy had the bolt stuck in his head?
I think that, yeah, it was. I think Vice has done a couple CZW related things. And so, they'd obviously, still have access to everybody. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting for Darkside to maybe cover a broader topic like deathmatch wrestling, which CZW obviously has been at the forefront of. Yeah. Now GCW, with who's run by a former CZW referee, Brett Lauderman. But yeah, no, it would be interesting. Also, it would just be interesting because, look, pro wrestling is pro wrestling. Whenever a company forms, there's probably weird stories about it anyways.
Yes.
So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what sprang up from. Obviously, they did one on XPW already, which had didn't run very long. I know it's running now, but it took a huge break. Because it sort of flamed out. CZW has been going the entire time. I think they're still going, aren't they? Isn't CZW?
I believe
so.
Not? Yeah, I believe they're still running shows. Yeah. They still are.
So yeah, no, I think it'd be really interesting. I've seen like only a small handful of CZW matches, but obviously a bunch of names have come from there, including famously John Moxley. Spent a lot of time.
There's Adam Cole wrestled in CZW. There's a lot of people who may not be well known as hardcore wrestlers who have wrestled in CZW.
Yeah.
Because they definitely up the ante in terms of the hardcore element in ECW. To extremes that I don't think was terribly common in the United States at the time.
Yeah.
But that's not exclusively what was going on there. I guess in the same sense to how ECW wasn't strictly defined by the hardcore aspect of what they did. There's a lot of other styles of wrestling at ECW. I think to a degree that was the same. I'm super familiar with CZW, but I can't imagine Adam Cole being in the cage death match. I believe there was a crossover storyline with Ring of Honor and CZW, and in the American independent scene post. The decline and fall of WCW. Ring of Honor was obviously the most prominent independent promotion, but, CZW seemingly grew pretty quickly.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. It seemed like there was a real desire for that in the marketplace. It is kind of interesting how, like, CZW, I know it was a couple years apart, but CZW and Ring of Honor sprung up within the same 3-4 year time span. And they did sort of represent two very distinct things that ECW, you could see ECW doing, because ECW, they were big into the wrestling, but then they also did like the extreme wrestling,
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it, where maybe if Ring of Honor was the promotion that focused more on the in-ring aspect, traditional in-ring pro wrestling aspect that ECW was presenting, whereas CZW took the hardcore element predominantly of ECW, predominantly focused on that, and pushed it to an extent that ECW I don't think ever really got.
Yeah, right. So I was just sort of curious. I looked up Adam Cole CZW deathmatch. He did wrestle Sammy Callahan at Cage of Death 14. I see a lot of chairs, and it looks like what is that? I don't know what that is. Looks like dog food or crap or something. I don't know what that is.
Ew.
Yeah,
There's duty
somebody
in there.
just dropped it out of a thing. But he did not. Whatever just happened. Oh, ew. I don't know what that is.
Here's some former CZW champions that you wouldn't necessarily think were hardcore wrestlers.
Yeah.
Rich Swann, it's a current
Mm-hmm.
CZW champ. Anthony Green, MJF is a former CZW champ. Swerve Strickland, Leo Rush, Jonathan Gresham.
So his dog, they introduced dog poop into this match, and then Adam Cole got to. I do appreciate that they have this like sort of hardcore extreme match, but nobody's bleeding. But Adam Cole is freaking out because he has some dog poop on him.
Yeah, that's gross.
Well, it's alleged dog poop. I don't know if it's real.
Oh,
dog
okay.
poop.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Drew
Drew Gulak.
There's a lot of it, and it looks very fresh.
Drew Gulak's former CZW champ.
Yep.
So, definitely a lot of the hardcore stuff, but not exclusively the hardcore stuff. So.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to number 5.
5.
Brawl Out. So, this probably have to wait about 10 years. And even then, who knows?
Not more than that, yeah.
Yeah, right. Because right now, allegedly, there's like there's some legal machinations preventing at least the Young Bucks from speaking to CM Punk or something like that.
Yeah,
that's
or the entirety of the lead, or who knows? We don't know. And I think it's the mystery, the lack of transparency in terms of how the investigation within AEW proceeded as it relates to Brawl Out.
Yeah.
That it's built up somewhat of a legendary status in the world of professional wrestling as this event that seemingly bits and pieces of information seem to be relatively well known. The basics of what happened that day seem to be relatively well known.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's the details, what led to those events inside the locker room when the fight was happening. Did the Young Bucks and Kenny rush through the door to confront CM Punk and Ace Steel, or is it more a situation
right.
where they came in to talk things out? These things we don't know.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And it's those details that I think people are curious about, because it adds interest to the story, and also I think some people are curious. Whose fault is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll put it this way. I think the desire is, or what people really want, is to hear the perspectives, so that they can sort of piece together whose fault it is. you know, because until we hear it from them, and I honestly suspect it's sort of going to be like nobody's fault. I think it's going to be like, I would suspect the Elite would be like, yeah, we wanted to go, and he said that his door was open to anybody who wanted to talk about it. He just said that we couldn't manage a Target, let alone a wrestling company. So we're going to go and open his door because he said we can do that. And then on Punk's side, he's probably like, they came in hot, so I decided to fuck him up. And then my dude bit a guy. So, I would imagine, but there's probably, from their points of view, variations.
Yeah.
and I would imagine it was probably like everybody is going to claim some amount of culpability and some amount of regret, but none enough to be like, yeah, no, the entire thing was my bad. I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be my suspicion as to how it would go down. And guess what? We still would get nothing in terms of like resolution or a real story, because it's everybody's perspective and everybody remembers shit differently,
Exactly. I mean, if there was a outside unbiased observer who witnessed everything, maybe their account of what happened could be the most unbiased of those presented. There was like Mega was apparently there and was there with the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Apparently early on there's people in there trying to break it up, like Christopher Daniels. But yeah, until we get some sort of transparent recounting of what happened, we're just never going to know. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's enough knowledge out there, but it would be very interesting just to hear the players speak on it and the witnesses speak on it. I mean, honestly, it just seems like the sort of thing that escalated quickly. And tempers were flaring. I mean, Punk was obviously already emotionally in a certain place. And to hear him say the things he did, the elite were probably certainly in a place. But yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see them address it. And who knows, maybe it's the kind of thing where if everybody gets on the same page to make some money, it'll allow them then to express what happened sooner than later. And when I say sooner, I mean within that 10-year time frame that I initially talked about. But if that never happens, if everybody leaves the company without having worked with each other, we're talking decades.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If and when they ever tell their story, it probably won't be on an episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Like someone will write a book about it, like CM Punk will write a book in a dozen years, or Dax or something like that. And they'll recount their recollections,
I think you're probably right. Yeah. But I'm trying to think like in terms of like a docu-style, thing.
Yeah.
Dark Side is sort of like the great thing. The Dark Side brand has become sort of, synonymous with. I could see that maybe being. Yeah, I think the book. I think definitely a book. Yeah, but I think that the first time anybody would speak in front of a camera on the record, I could see that. I could see that. Yeah. But I could see the book happening first. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Dark Side probably wouldn't get the story first. It'd be someone writing a book and be like, "Hey, find out the truth about Brawl Out in this book, so wrestling fans will buy it."
We should kayfabe the version of it and put it in a comic book form, graphic novel form.
There we go.
And then we just change everybody's names because I still think that like you need likeness rights and stuff. Anyways, let's move on to number 4. The Montreal Screwjob. That is the original Montreal Screwjob. Talking about people getting bit, Larson.
Yeah, we're gonna go all the way back to what is this? 1930.
December 10th, 1930.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
That's what this article says right here.
Oh,
wait a second. No,
May 4th, 1931.
Yeah, there it is. May 4th, 1931.
When Ed Lewis was taking on Henri Deglaine in Montreal. Ed Lewis was champ. He had the title. 2 out of 3 falls bout in Deglaine's home turf, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Lewis lost the first fall, so rather than just continuing the match, apparently each wrestler adjourned to their respective locker rooms.
Yeah.
And apparently at that point, either Deglaine or one member of his training staff bit him under his arm. And so they went back out to the ring at one point. That's during before the second fall. After a pit attempt, Deglaine gets up, agitated, and shows off the bite mark. And so the referee DQs Lewis and awards the fall and therefore the title to Deglaine.
Damn. Yeah. Shady.
And it was this incident that Cornette referenced in the Montreal Screwjob episode.
Which is why he had the most credibility because he had we just do this again. Yeah. Do you think that they should have done like Shawn Michaels should have like bit himself? And then
that'd have been an interesting reference to
and then he's like, he bit me. The hitman bit me. And then the ref and then Hebner's like, ring the bell, DQ, you keep your title.
They'd have to change the stipulation that if anybody got DQ'd or counted out, the title could change hands. That'd be an important stipulation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because Brett walked in with the title. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting that this happened because we'll talk about more about Ed Lewis within the context of the GOLDDUST trio later on. But one of the reasons that Tootsman and Billy Sandow formed this alliance with Ed Lewis is that he was like the best in the world, and the chances of anybody shooting on him in any respect was like, no, that's not going to happen. This guy could just legit beat anybody.
Right. Yeah.
And so I guess to a degree, Henri Deglaine was like, I have a creative solution to this. Oh, chomp. They didn't rely on wrestling savvy or skill, but just wits.
Yeah. Yeah. The ref wasn't in on it. He was just like, well, this guy, he could beat me no matter what. I'm not going to be able to pin his shoulders to the mat. So, let's try something a little bit clever.
Subterfuge.
He's never going to see this coming. What are you going to do? I'm going to bite myself. Kind of interesting. And there's still a lot of debate to this day over who knew what. Now, obviously, this would be kind of Dark Side episode where they just have to talk to Cornette and Bill Apter and Dave Meltzer.
Yeah.
And I mean, because if they find, I don't know. I mean, maybe I would imagine, because I'm sure Ed Strangler Lewis probably has like recounted that story to people who might have recounted it to other people. So you might get like some secondhand or even third-hand, accounts of it from people.
There was press of the day that maybe covered it too.
Right. Yeah, that could be as well. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, back then it was so interesting reading up on. I got this book. It's called Death of the I think it's called Death of the Territory. It's one of those books I got, and it talks about, just how cutthroat wrestling was back then, when you'd have, multiple promotions and territories trying to claim that they had a real world's champion, and then that person, they'd be bribing like the state commissions to get like promotions shut down and shit like that, so that they had the real world's champion. It was gnarly and cutthroat back then, because it was big money. That's what we'll talk about in this here in a second here. The GOLDDUST trio took it out of the carnivals into the arenas and started making big money off it. And when there's big money, people are going to want a piece of it, and they're going to want to edge out the competition.
Exactly.
In this case, they took a bite out of the competition. Let's talk about number 3. Black Saturday. So this is when Vince McMahon was like, he was awkwardly stumbling his way into nationalizing the WWF.
Yes.
And one way he did that was to purchase the cable time slot of what was it, Georgia Championship Wrestling?
Georgia Championship Wrestling on the Superstation TBS.
Which was wildly different in presentation than the WWF back then.
Yeah.
In that WWF, if you ever watched the WWF wrestling back then, they were trying their damnedest to present it as like a sport. It's like the commentators were very, Vince were very much looking at it as a sport. Bob Backlund, probably the least back then. Later on, like 90s Backlund, for some reason, he's got tons of charisma.
Yeah, I know.
Backlund now has tons of charisma. If you look at him as a champion for 5 years back in the 70s and early 80s, this dude had zero charisma. His promos were mumbly bumbly.
But he had the amateur wrestling credentials.
But he was a stud in the ring. Exactly. He had the credentials. The guy looked like an Olympian. But you go over to Georgia Championship Wrestling, and everything looked like a bar fight. They had colorful characters, they had Dusty Rhodes, they had all those NWA guys. And so Vince comes in, and just imagine again, you're, down there in Georgia, you're enjoying your territory wrestling. It's like the only thing right? Because you're not watching the New York product.
No.
And you're like, oh man, let's check out Dusty Rhodes this week, or Magnum TA, or whoever. Or Harley Race. And then it's just Vince McMahon, and he's like, oh, look what happened at Madison Square Garden last week. And you just get like a bunch of clips from WWE. It's like, what the fuck is this shit?
Exactly.
Where are my people? Yeah, and that's what Black Saturday was.
Yeah, July 14th, 1984. People who were expecting some Georgia Championship Wrestling. The show was called World Championship Wrestling.
Right, yeah.
They turn it on that day, and they don't see the faces they're familiar with. Instead, they see Vince McMahon.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about his new show. Talking about the WWF. And when it lasted, all of so they started losing money because people stopped watching it, because it wasn't the product they were used to. They wanted their NWA action.
Right, exactly. They wanted dudes in jeans with pot bellies.
Exactly.
And cages bleeding all over the place. Yeah. So yeah, it was July 14th, and that's when Vince was introduced as basically the new dad. And he was like, no, you're going to love this shit. And then so that was July 14th of 84. People didn't like it. And then March 2nd, 1985, they started airing in-studio matches, and they changed the name of the show to WWF Georgia Championship Wrestling. And then it was like a bunch of WWF stars there. These programs ran until March 30th. And then it was purchased by Jim Crockett, who purchased the slot from McMahon, who then was able to take that money and do WrestleMania
Mania
with
1.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It says Turner himself, because, this is all going down on Turner Programming. He was angered by the sinking ratings and made 2 decisions that would fix the ratings problem. First, he made an offer to Bill Watts, who ran Mid-South, to take a Sunday afternoon time slot on TBS. And then he entered into negotiations to bring Georgia Wrestling Championship Wrestling from Georgia to Saturday mornings. And then McMahon was pissed off about this. And so it was just a mess.
Yeah.
So everybody
Turner was counter programming his own programming.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. That was when McMahon he was doing too much, man. He was doing too much.
A lot.
He was doing too much.
A lot.
He was like, "Oh, you're gonna like this a lot better. It's really boring. If you go back and watch that shit, it's boring as fuck.
Yeah,
it's boring till Hogan gets there. Like once Hogan gets there, it's like, oh my god, what is this? This dude looks like a cartoon.
Yeah,
before
that dull.
Before that, very dull. All right, let's move on to number 2. The GOLDDUST Trio. So the history of wrestling up to like the 1920s and 30s. It was very carnival based, a lot of carny action there, and
long matches, long dull matches.
Now a lot of those matches were still to a degree predetermined, but I think a lot of the times they would just sort of have like really good wrestlers against jabronis, and that was the predetermined nature of it. But the problem with these things is that they went on too long, man.
Yeah,
it was like these
2-hour
long
grappling
matches.
contests, and you're like, oh gosh.
And it was just a couple of dudes like rolling around trying to pin each other's like shoulders to the mat. I think 2 out of 3 falls was like the norm back then.
The norm, yeah, it was.
Which is silly, but yeah. And then along comes Ed Strangler Lewis. Already talked about him. He was a dominant champion, and then he met up with Billy Sandow and Toots Mondt. And they were like, "Hey, how can we make this better?" And they're like, "Well, number one. All these 3-hour matches, nobody's into that. How about like 15-minute matches? Let's do that instead. And then we can have DQs, and then we can actually plan out the finishes." They're like, "Look, we're already suckering people into thinking that this stuff, even though like the press back then totally knew that this shit was fake."
Yeah.
They're like, "Look, people already know it's fake, so at least let's make it entertaining because we want to bring it out of the carnivals and into the arenas because we think we can make a lot of money on this fake fighting shit." And then they did that, and they made a lot of money on the fake fighting shit.
They did. They called this new style, which is it's interesting reading up on it a bit and hearing that Toots Mondt, in a lot of respects, is the one who's responsible for pro wrestling as we know it now.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Not to downplay Lewis or Sandow's contributions, but it seems like Mondt came up with most of the finishes himself. The style was called Slam Bang Western style. Introduces like body slams, punches, suplexes, things that are normal these days within the language of professional wrestling.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
brand new stuff in the 1920s.
Yeah.
And by every conceivable measure, probably a lot more exciting than 2 dudes locked up in a collar and elbow tie-up for 12 minutes,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Trying to gain leverage on one another.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not shocking to hear about how it took wrestling out of carnivals and into stadiums and arenas in really short order, seemingly.
Yeah.
And pretty much once they developed the style and started booking their matches accordingly, they basically took over wrestling on a national level for a good chunk of the 20s.
Because they were making so much more money. The wrestlers would make so much more money by wrestling.
They were signing them to exclusive contracts and all this stuff. Yeah.
They were basically Vince McMahon before Vince McMahon. Exactly.
And it's funny because Toots Mondt was Vince Sr.'s mentor. He helped found the WWF.
Yeah. When it was a Capital Wrestling Corporation.
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, like anything, for them to succeed, a lot of other people would fail. And therein lies the dark aspect of it, is that you get a lot of people who are like, "Oh man, no, see, I like it being in the carnival. All these rubes out here betting money on it." Because they used to bet money. Like, that's what they would do. It's like, "Oh, come see these strongmen. How much you want to bet on this jabroni over here?" And then like guy would step up
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, there's no way he's gonna win, and then he would win.
Well, that guy would lift like 500 pounds over his head. Be like, oh no, there's no chance this guy loses. Little they know that weight, that 500-pound weight, completely hollow.
Exactly. And they lose all their bits.
I know.
Man.
He put 4 bits on this match.
I had 4 bits on this guy. I had a whole $1. That's like a month's wage. 1915 or whatever it is.
1921 or something like that.
I just got back from the war.
So GOLDDUST Trio, eventually they disbanded.
Well, yeah, they imploded because like they started getting too greedy with each other.
Exactly. And so they all went their separate ways. And Ed Lewis, obviously, he ended up getting screwed out of the title by Henri Deglaine in Montreal a few years after the breakup. Mentioned Tootsmon going on to form the WWF. And then Billy Sandow, later managed some other wrestlers. It says here on Wikipedia, Everett Marshall and Roy Dunn.
Oh, what? I didn't know he managed Everett Marshall and Roy Dunn. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, Ed Lewis went on to be the manager for one Lou Thez.
Jeez, that's how old this shit is. He was managing Lou Thez. Oh, man. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to number 1. God damn it. Vince McMahon goes national. Man, I'm reading this great book. I forget what it's called. Maybe it's Death of the I don't know what it is. But it's like, it's just literally, it is chapter after chapter after chapter of Vince McMahon getting on planes and just offering giant checks to territories to take their TV time slots, put on his boring ass WWF shit, or they'd be like, nah, we're doing good here. And he's like, oh, fine. And he just poaches them and runs them out of town.
Yeah, he takes all their top talent and then
nobody.
They got no hope after that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So the story of Vince McMahon, purchasing the WWF from his dad, and then being like, oh,
pennies on the dollar at that.
Yeah. Right.
He paid his dad $1 million for it.
Oh, I don't know.
I think that's what it was.
Oh, is that what it was?
I think that's what it was.
$1 million for WrestleMania and $1 million for his actual company.
I think so.
All right. Didn't he get it from like Linda's, like his wife's family or something like that?
Oh,
I don't
maybe.
know. There's probably a lot of Mandela effects going on right here. I would think that the Dark Side guys would probably do a bit more research than we have, given that they have like a whole show.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a whole staff that does the research. We are but 2 men.
We came up with this idea an hour ago.
Yeah, I know.
Oh man.
So if some of the details are a little fuzzy, sorry.
Yeah, I know exactly. But no, look, man. Clearly, they did the steroid trial, which was shocking in that they had McDevitt, the lawyer.
Yeah, that is.
On the record there for Darkseid, which is pretty ballsy. But yeah, it would be really interesting to get. Obviously they did the Tales from the Territories, and then they can tell sort of the last story of that, which was.
Yeah, and knowing, that getting a lot of the people that were involved in running those territories during the Tales of Territory series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear their perspective on this in particular.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of crazy that like Vince McMahon just sort of did what, honestly, he was just forward thinking, it's like, and unfortunately Vince, he was also incredibly cutthroat and he's a bit of a fucking bastard, but, so it was, unfortunately it was the fucking bastard who took it national, but it's like it would have happened if somebody, he was Vern Gagne, somebody would have figured out eventually.
Oh, I don't think Vern would have. He didn't seem to have any inclination to really go beyond the upper
No,
Midwest.
I know, but like eventually somebody would have.
Yeah, eventually, especially, when you have the advent of cable and you could have, like TBS did, a network, or WGN is another example, a network that's regional in terms of its focus, available to anybody across the nation. I remember growing up in the mid late 80s and watching a lot of Cubs games on WGN just because they were on.
Right. Yeah.
And I really liked baseball.
Yeah.
And you, whether it's Georgia Championship Wrestling or Vince on USA at the time, it was going to happen eventually where a regional promotion was going to gain such a fan base on a national level because of cable.
Yeah.
that it seemed inevitable. Confirmed $1 million. That Vince
Oh,
paid
wow.
for.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy.
My memory didn't fail me this time.
And their stock price today is as high as it's ever been. It reached
$115, right?
Oh, it was 15? Okay.
Well, 114 plus.
Man, oh man. Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, this would be the ultimate story, I think, to tell about Vince McMahon just running roughshod brother. And
it would be
the perspectives, yeah.
You make the Thanos analogy with Vince.
Mm-hmm.
This would kind of be the ultimate culmination of,
yeah, right.
at least the first part of Vince's story, you know, before the eventual downfall.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So.
Yep, seems like a natural one to do. Anyways, let us know what you guys want to see in the comments below for the next season of Dark Side of the Ring. Who knows? Maybe Evan and Jason will be looking at the comments and be like, not a bad
Great
idea.
ideas, all of them.
Great ideas. Look at all these great ideas that the Friendos have. You know. Anyways, that's going to do it for this count out. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you around.
Goodbye.